The alarm bells rang through the Galactic Council building like screaming voices. Red lights flashed on every wall, making the great circular room look like it was covered in blood. Ambassador Zethkri of the Vorthan Empire stood at the center, podium, his crystal-like skin reflecting the harsh emergency lights. His hands shook as he held the datapad. In all his years serving on the council, he had never seen reports like these. 3 human colonies had gone completely silent in the same night. No distress calls, no final messages, just nothing. The attacks happened in the outer rim sectors, Zethkri announced to the packed chamber. His voice carried across the room, but it sounded weak and frightened. Initial reports suggest coordinated strikes. All 3 colonies have been eliminated. The room fell silent. Not the good kind of silent that came during respectful moments. This was the terrible silence that came when everyone realized something very bad was about to happen. Council Speaker Morden leaned forward in her floating chair. She was old, even by the standards of her long-lived species. She had seen wars rise and fall, watched entire civilizations grow and die. Her voice was soft, but everyone heard her clearly. Who did this? That simple question hung in the air like a death sentence. Every alien representative in the room knew the one rule that kept the galaxy peaceful: never attack humanity. Ever. It was not written in any treaty or law. It did not need to be. Everyone just knew. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison sat in the human observer section. He was a big man with gray eyes and weathered hands. His uniform was simple and clean, without the fancy decorations that other species love to wear. When he stood up, every eye in the chamber turned to him. Jake walked slowly to his communication station. His movements were calm and steady, but those who knew humans could see the dangerous look in his eyes. He activated his communicator with careful precision. Captain Bennett, patch me through to Admiral Collins at Earth Command. Priority Alpha authorization. The chamber watched in complete silence as Jake made his report. His voice was flat and professional, like he was reading a grocery list instead of reporting an act of war. No anger, no threats. Just facts delivered in that cold, efficient way that humans used when they were really serious about something. Admiral Collins, this is Morrison. 3 colonies have been attacked and destroyed. New Providence, Titan's Edge, and Green Valley. All communication lost at approximately 300 hours standard time. No survivors detected. Council has been informed and is requesting immediate human response authorization. There was a pause as the Admiral responded. Jake listened carefully, then nodded once. Understood, sir. Earth Command has been notified. We thank the Council for bringing this matter to our attention. Jake cut the communication and sat back down. That was it. No big speeches about revenge or justice, no demands for action from the Council. Just a simple acknowledgement and a polite thank you. But every alien in that room knew what those words really meant. Earth had been told. The sleeping giant was waking up. Ambassador Kelthan of the Rigel Federation stood up slowly. His blue skin had turned pale, and his forearms were trembling. Surely this is some mistake, he said, his voice high with worry. No one would be foolish enough to deliberately attack human colonies. The evidence is clear, Zethkri replied, showing the data on the main screen. Coordinated strikes, military precision. This was not an accident or a random pirate raid. Counselor Vexara from the Outer Rim Alliance made a low whistling sound that, in her species, meant extreme concern. Who could have done this? What species has both the capability and the stupidity to provoke humanity? The question started a buzz of conversation throughout the chamber. Representatives leaned toward each other, whispering in dozens of different languages. Everyone was asking the same thing. Who would be crazy enough to attack the humans? The Thurvians were peaceful traders who barely had a military. The Zenthari were too busy with their own civil wars to bother anyone else. The Aquatic Coalition never left their waterworlds. The Crystalline Hegemony were isolationists who had not spoken to anyone in 50 years. None of the known military powers would dare attack humanity. They had all learned that lesson the hard way over the past 2 centuries. Speaker Mordun called for order. and the room gradually became quiet again. She looked at Jake Morrison with something that might have been sympathy, or maybe fear. "Commander Morrison, on behalf of the Galactic Council, we offer our deepest condolences for this tragedy. If there is anything the Council can do to assist in your investigation," Jake stood again and gave a small, polite bow. "Thank you, Speaker Morden. Earth appreciates the Council's concern. We will handle this matter appropriately." The way he said "appropriately" made several representatives shift uncomfortably in their seats. When humans said they would handle something appropriately, it usually meant someone was going to regret their life choices very soon. As Jake sat down, Ambassador Thekmore of the Crystalline Hegemony activated his communication array. He was one of the oldest members of the Council, old enough to remember the border wars and the Rigel incident. His crystalline voice carried the weight of experience. "I must contact my government immediately," he announced. "We need to ensure all hegemony ships are accounted for, and that none of our citizens are in human space without proper documentation." That started a rush for the communication stations. Within minutes, every representative was frantically calling their home governments. They were not offering to help find the attackers. They were making sure their own people could not possibly be blamed for what had happened, because they all knew what came next. Jake Morrison watched the chaos with calm eyes. He had seen this reaction before during smaller incidents. The galaxy was terrified of humanity, not because humans were the strongest or had the best weapons, but because of what happened when you made them angry. Humans did not fight wars to win territory or resources. They fought wars to make sure the war never happened again. They fought wars to send a message to anyone else who might be thinking about causing trouble. And now someone had just sent humanity a message by attacking their colonies. Jake activated his personal communicator one more time, using a private channel that only the highest levels of Earth Command could access. "Admiral Collins, this is Morrison. Personal observation. Recommend immediate fleet mobilization. The galaxy is preparing for what's coming. Whatever hit our colonies, they're not from any known species. This is something new, and everyone here is scared." He paused, watching the panicked aliens rushing around the chamber. "Sir, I think we're going to need everything we have for this one." The communication ended, and Jake sat back to watch the show. Throughout the galaxy, messages were flying at light speed as every species tried to distance themselves from what had happened, because they all understood one simple truth that apparently someone had forgotten. You do not attack humanity. Ever. The galaxy was about to remember why. News of the attack spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. Every trade station, every diplomatic outpost, every backwater mining colony heard the same impossible story. Someone had attacked human settlements. The reaction was always the same: shocked silence followed by worried whispers. On Nexus Prime, the biggest trade station in the galaxy, Captain Elena Rodriguez was trying to enjoy a quiet meal when the news broke. She was a merchant captain, hauling cargo between human worlds and alien markets. Her ship, the New Horizons, was docked for routine maintenance when the emergency broadcast started playing on every screen in the station. Elena had barely finished reading the news report when alien traders began surrounding her table. First came Kixara, a six-armed Zenthari who had been trading with humans for 20 years. His normally cheerful face was twisted with worry. "Captain Rodriguez," he said, his voice shaking. "You must warn your people. Whoever did this, they do not understand what they have awakened." Elena looked up from her meal, confused. "Warn them about what, Kix?" "Earth Command already knows about the attacks. They're handling it." No, interrupted Veshatar, a insect-like being whose species rarely talked to anyone outside their own hives. "You do not understand. We have seen what happens when humans are provoked." More aliens gathered around Elena's table. She recognized most of them: traders, diplomats, station workers she had dealt with for years. All of them looked terrified, and all of them were looking at her like she held the key to preventing some terrible disaster. "What are you all talking about?" Elena asked. "We're just another species in the galaxy. We trade, we explore, we keep to ourselves mostly. Old Gorthak, a massive Thurvian whose people were known for their calm wisdom, shook his huge head sadly. Captain, your people, they are not like the rest of us. When you are pushed, you do not simply push back. You remove the thing that pushed you. The aliens began sharing stories. Some Elena had heard before in different versions. Others were completely new to her, but they all had the same theme. Humans did not fight wars the way other species did. Kixara told her about the siege of Kepler 442, where a single human frigate had held off an entire pirate fleet for 3 days. The pirates had 20 ships, he said, his voice filled with awe. 20 ships against one. But the human captain, he did not surrender. He did not retreat. He made them pay for every meter of space they took. What happened? Elena asked. The pirates finally destroyed the human ship, Kixara replied. But by then they had lost 15 of their own vessels. The survivors were so scared they disbanded their entire fleet and became peaceful traders. Veshitar clicked his mandibles nervously as he spoke. My hive mother remembers the Mercy run to Altair 7. Human ships flew through a stellar storm that would have destroyed any other vessel, just to deliver medical supplies to a plague-stricken world. Ships that should have been turned to space, dust by solar radiation, somehow made it through, because their crews simply refused to let people die. An elderly Thurvian ambassador who had been listening quietly finally spoke up. His voice was deep and sad. Your species has a saying, yes? Speak softly and carry a big stick. The galaxy has seen your stick, human. Whoever attacked your colonies, they have not. Elena was starting to understand. To these aliens, humanity was not just another member of the galactic community. They were something else entirely. Something that most species preferred to think about as little as possible. You're all afraid of us, she said. It was not a question. Not afraid, corrected Gorthak gently. Respectful. Your people are intense. When you decide something needs to be done, you do it completely. No half measures. No compromises. Meanwhile, on his flagship orbiting Earth, Admiral Frank Collins was discovering just how intense the galaxy expected humanity to be. His communication officer, Commander Lisa Park, had been fielding calls all day. Sir, she reported, looking exhausted. We've received diplomatic messages from 17 different species. They're all offering assistance with the investigation. Collins looked up from the tactical reports flowing in from the outer rim. The attacks had been surgical, precise, and completely without warning. Whoever had done this possessed technology that could match humanity's own. They're not offering to help us, Commander, Collins said with a grim smile. They're trying to make sure we don't decide they were involved. The reports from the attack sites were disturbing. The colonies had not just been destroyed, they had been harvested. Every piece of human technology, every computer core, every advanced system had been carefully removed, but the colonists themselves had simply vanished. Collins studied the star charts showing the locations of the attacks. All 3 colonies were in the outer rim, far from the main shipping lanes, but they were not random targets. Each one had been home to advanced research facilities or prototype testing centers. Someone's been watching us, he murmured. Learning about us. Planning this for a long time. Commander Park looked worried. Sir, if they've been studying us for years, they must know our capabilities. Why would they risk attacking us? Because they don't understand us, Collins replied. They think like every other species in the galaxy. They probably calculated that taking out a few remote colonies would be worth the risk. They don't realize that to humans it doesn't matter if it was 3 colonies or 3 planets. An attack is an attack. Back on Nexus Prime, Elena Rodriguez found herself at the center of an impromptu gathering. Word had spread through the station that there was a human captain in the main dining area, and aliens from dozens of different species had come to see her. They were not hostile. If anything, they seemed protective, like they were trying to shield her from some terrible knowledge. But their stories painted a picture of humanity that Elena barely recognized. They talked about human rescue ships that would fly into active war zones to evacuate civilians, regardless of which side the civilians belonged to. They described human negotiators who would spend months or even years working to prevent conflicts that other species would have simply ignored. But they also told darker stories. They spoke of what happened to pirates who attacked human ships, slavers who captured human citizens, or anyone who threatened human colonies. Your people do not simply defeat enemies, explained a delicate crystal being whose name Elena could not pronounce. You eliminate them so completely that others fear to follow their example. We're not monsters, Elena protested. No, agreed Gorthak, sadly. You are something far more frightening. You are beings who will sacrifice everything to protect what you believe is right. And you believe that innocent people should be left alone. As the hours passed, Elena began to understand why the galaxy was reacting with such fear to the news of the attacks. It was not just that someone had attacked humanity. It was that someone had attacked humanity and did not seem to understand what they had just done. Whoever hit your colonies, said Kixara quietly, they think they are dealing with just another species. They think they can attack you and then negotiate or hide or make excuses. Can't they? Elena asked. The gathered aliens exchanged glances that needed no translation. Finally, Veshitar spoke for all of them. Captain Rodriguez, your people have our reputation throughout the galaxy. When you are wronged, you do not seek compensation or apologies. You seek to ensure that the wrong can never happen again. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. What are you saying? We are saying, replied the elderly Thurvian ambassador, that whoever attacked your colonies has just signed their own death warrant, and they probably do not even know it yet. The gathering slowly dispersed as aliens returned to their ships and businesses, but Elena noticed something as they left. They were all making preparations to leave the station. Not immediately, but soon. The galaxy was getting out of humanity's way, and somewhere in the outer rim the attackers were about to learn why that was such a wise decision. The human response began with the kind of efficiency that had made them famous throughout the galaxy. Within 6 hours of the first reports, a task force was assembled and jumping toward the outer rim. This was not a rescue mission. Everyone knew the colonies were gone. This was something else entirely. Captain Danny Foster stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching stars streak past as they traveled faster than light toward the attack sites. Foster was a legend in human military circles, a veteran of the border wars who had earned his reputation the hard way. His ship was equally famous, a heavy cruiser that had been in more battles than any vessel still in active service. Dropping out of hyperspace in 30 seconds, announced his navigation officer, Lieutenant Amy Chen. She was young but brilliant, one of the best sensor specialists in the fleet. All stations, prepare for normal space operations, Foster ordered. His voice was calm and steady, but everyone on the bridge could feel the tension in the air. They all knew what they were likely to find at New Providence Colony. The Retribution dropped back into normal space with barely a shiver. Ahead of them lay the New Providence system, a yellow star with 3 planets, one of which had been home to 15,000 human colonists just 2 days ago. Scanning the system now, reported Dr. Amy Chen from her station. Her face was pale as she read the results. I'm detecting the colony infrastructure, but no life signs. Take us in, Foster ordered. The flight to New Providence took 20 minutes. As they approached the planet, the magnitude of what had happened became clear. The colony was still there. Every building, every road, every piece of infrastructure. But it was completely empty. My God, whispered Dr. Chen as the Retribution entered orbit. They didn't destroy anything, they just took everyone. Foster studied the images appearing on the main screen. New Providence had been a thriving settlement, home to families who had come to the outer rim looking for a fresh start. Now it looked like a ghost town, perfectly preserved but utterly lifeless. Landing party, Foster announced. I want a full investigation team on the ground in 1 hour. The landing shuttle touched down in the colony's main square 2 hours later. Foster led the team personally, accompanied by Dr. Chen and Security Chief Marcus Wright. The silence was the first thing that hit them. No voices, no machinery, no sounds of life at all. They walked through empty streets past abandoned homes. Meals sat half-finished on kitchen tables. Children's toys lay scattered in yards. Cars sat parked exactly where their owners had left them. Everything suggested that life had been proceeding normally when something happened to make every single person simply vanish. "Captain," called Dr. Chen from beside a house near the town center. "You need to see this." Foster joined her at what had been a family home. Through the window they could see a dining room with plates set for dinner, but the meal was still warm. "Whatever happened here," Dr. Chen said quietly, "it happened fast." And recently, Security Chief Wright was examining the colony's central, administrative building. As a former police detective, he knew how to read a crime scene. What he found made his blood run cold. "Captain," he called out, "the computers are gone. All of them. Every data core, every storage device, every piece of advanced technology has been carefully removed." Foster frowned. "Removed? Not destroyed?" "Removed," Wright confirmed. "Whoever did this, they weren't interested in destroying the colony. They wanted to harvest it." The investigation continued for hours. The more they discovered, the more disturbing the picture became. The attackers had not just taken the people, they had systematically stripped away every piece of human technology and innovation. Manufacturing equipment, research data, even the colony's small defensive systems had all been carefully extracted, but they had left behind a message. Dr. Chen found it at the colony's memorial wall, where the names of new providences, founders were carved in stone. Below the human names, someone had left words in perfect galactic standard script. "The Council protects the weak. We harvest the strong." Foster stared at the inscription for a long moment. The implications were clear and terrifying. Whoever had done this did not see the attack as a random raid or an act of war. They saw it as farming. "Get me Admiral Collins," Foster said quietly. "Tell him we have a bigger problem than we thought." Back on Earth, the message from New Providence reached the highest levels of government within the hour. President Katie Sullivan convened an emergency meeting of the Defense Council in the secure bunker beneath the Capitol. "They're not random attacks," explained General Paul Martinez as he displayed the intelligence reports on the main screen. "Each colony they hit was strategically significant. New Providence was a materials research center. Titan's Edge was testing new propulsion systems. Green Valley was developing advanced communications technology." The room fell silent as the implications became clear. Someone had been watching human development for years, carefully selecting targets that would give them access to humanity's most advanced innovations. "What kind of enemy are we dealing with?" asked President Sullivan. Admiral Collins, attending the meeting via secure transmission from his flagship, looked grim. "Based on the evidence from New Providence, we're facing someone with technology far beyond our own. They were able to appear without warning, harvest an entire colony, and vanish without leaving any trace of how they did it." "Recommendations?" the President asked. General Martinez and Admiral Collins exchanged glances. They had worked together for years and could communicate with looks alone. "We mobilize everything," Collins said finally. "Every ship, every resource, every advantage we have. Because whoever did this made one critical mistake." "Which is?" "They don't understand the first rule of fighting humans." President Sullivan leaned forward. "Explain." Collins's expression grew cold. "Never make it personal. They didn't just attack military targets or strategic locations. They took civilians, families, children. They harvested human beings like they were crops to be gathered." The President understood immediately. Throughout human history, armies that targeted civilians discovered that they had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. They found themselves facing not just professional soldiers, but an entire species that would not rest until justice was done. "How long until we can begin operations?" she asked. "The task force is already investigating the attack sites," Admiral Collins replied. "Captain Foster is our best field commander. If anyone can track down these attackers, it's him." Meanwhile, Captain Foster was discovering just how difficult that tracking would be. The investigation teams had spread out across all 3 attack sites, and the reports coming back were consistently disturbing. At Titan's Edge, the research station had been completely gutted. Every prototype, every test result, every piece of experimental data had been taken. But the scientists and their families had vanished just as completely as the colonists at New Providence. Green Valley told the same story. The communications equipment was gone. The researchers had disappeared, and the only trace left behind was another message. Your innovations serve a greater purpose now. Dr. Chen was analyzing energy readings from all three sites when she made a discovery that changed everything. Captain, she called out, her voice tight with excitement and fear. I found something. These energy patterns from the harvesting equipment, they're not from any known technology. Foster joined her at the sensor station. What kind of energy patterns? The readings are consistent with theoretical models for dimensional phase technology, Dr. Chen explained. But that's supposed to be impossible. The power requirements alone would be enormous. Foster felt his blood run cold. Dimensional phase technology was something human scientists had theorized about but never been able to make practical. It would allow objects to exist partially outside normal space, making them effectively invisible and untouchable. How advanced would they have to be to make this work? He asked. Dr. Chen looked up from her instruments, her face pale. Centuries ahead of us, Captain. Maybe longer. The implications were staggering. Humanity was facing an enemy with technology so advanced it might as well be magic. They could appear anywhere without warning, take whatever they wanted, and disappear without leaving any way to track them. But Foster had been fighting impossible odds his entire career. He activated his communicator. All ships, this is Captain Foster. We have confirmed dimensional phase signatures at all three attack sites. Begin implementation of Tracking Protocol 7 immediately. Across the human fleet, scientists and engineers began working on a problem that should have been impossible to solve. Tracking something that existed partially outside normal space required thinking in ways that most species would never consider. But humanity had built its reputation on doing the impossible. President Sullivan's address to the nation was broadcast on all frequencies throughout human space and by extension to the entire galaxy. To whoever has taken our people, you have made a grave mistake. You have struck at civilians, at families, at the innocent. You may possess superior technology, but you clearly do not understand what you face. We are humanity. We do not forget. We do not forgive. And we never ever give up. Return our people, and we will consider mercy. Continue this. As news of humanity's mobilization spread throughout the galaxy, something remarkable happened. Trade routes quietly shifted away from human space. Diplomatic missions found urgent reasons to be postponed. Military patrols discovered important business in distant sectors. The galaxy was getting out of humanity's way. On the council world of Drakmor, emergency sessions ran around the clock. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the Great Chamber, all asking the same question. Who could have been foolish enough to provoke humanity? Ambassador Kelton of the Rigel Federation stood before the assembly, his blue skin pale with worry. We must identify the attackers immediately, he declared, before this situation spirals completely out of control. The list of suspects is surprisingly short, replied Councillor Vexara from the Outer Rim Alliance. Most species understand the consequences of attacking humans too well to even consider it. The debate had been going on for hours. The Void Hunters were scavengers who lacked the organization for such coordinated attacks. The crystalline hegemony had been isolationist for decades. The Aquatic Coalition never left their water worlds. Every major military power in the galaxy had learned to respect human capabilities the hard way. What if it's not a known species, suggested Ambassador Thekmore of the crystalline hegemony. His ancient voice carried the weight of centuries. What if we're dealing with something new, something from outside our normal sphere of contact? The suggestion sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. The galaxy was vast, and there were always rumors of species that lived in the dark spaces between the spiral arms. Most were dismissed as legends, but the attacks on human colonies suggested that maybe some legends were based on truth. Speaker Morden called for order, her voice cutting through the worried murmur of conversation. Regardless of who is responsible, we must prepare for what comes next. Humanity is mobilizing for war, and we need to ensure that innocent species are not caught in the crossfire. Meanwhile, Captain Foster's investigation had led him deeper into human space, following a trail of clues that grew more disturbing with each discovery. The fourth attack site, at the research station on Titan's Edge, provided the breakthrough they needed. Dr. Amy Chen made the discovery while analyzing residual energy signatures left by the harvesting equipment. She had been working for 18 hours straight, surviving on coffee and determination, when her instruments detected something impossible. "Captain," she called out, her voice tight with excitement and fear. "These energy patterns. I've found traces of dimensional phase activity." Foster joined her at the sensor station, studying the readings that scrolled across the screen. The energy signatures were unlike anything in human databases, but they followed patterns that human scientists had theorized about for decades. "How certain are you?" Foster asked. 97%, Dr. Chen replied. "Someone has made dimensional phase technology practical. That's how they appeared without warning and vanished without a trace." Foster felt his world shift. Dimensional phase technology was something human scientists had dreamed about but never achieved. The power requirements were enormous, and the theoretical problems seemed impossible to solve. If someone had made it work, it explained everything about the attacks. How advanced would they have to be? He asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Dr. Chen looked up from her instruments, her face pale. "Centuries ahead of us, Captain. Maybe millennia. To make dimensional phase technology practical, they would need to understand physics in ways that we can barely imagine." The implications were staggering. Humanity was facing an enemy with technology so advanced that they might as well be gods. They could appear anywhere, take anything, and vanish back into whatever dimension they came from. But Foster had been fighting impossible odds his entire career. He activated his communicator with the calm precision that had made him famous throughout the fleet. "All ships, this is Captain Foster. We have confirmed dimensional phase technology at all attack sites. Begin tracking Protocol 7 immediately, and patch me through to Admiral Collins." The connection to Admiral Collins took several minutes to establish. When the Admiral's face appeared on the screen, Foster could see the strain of the past few days in his eyes. "What do you have for me, Danny?" Collins asked. "Bad news and worse news, sir," Foster replied. "The bad news is that we're dealing with technology centuries beyond our own. The worst news is that they're not done with us." Foster transmitted the energy readings and analysis to the Admiral's flagship. Collins studied the data for several minutes, his expression growing darker with each page. "Dimensional phase technology," Collins muttered. "I was afraid of something like this." "Sir, we've been tracking unusual energy readings in deep space for the past 6 months, Collins explained. "Nothing concrete, just strange signatures that didn't match any known technology. We thought they might be natural phenomena." Foster understood immediately. "They've been scouting us, learning about our capabilities, our defenses, our technology, and now they're harvesting us," Collins confirmed grimly. "The question is why?" That question was answered 12 hours later when 3 more colonies vanished overnight. But this time, the attackers left behind more than just energy signatures and cryptic messages. The colony at New Bethlehem was home to 30,000 people, making it the largest settlement in the Outer Rim. When the attack came, the colony's automated defense systems managed to record several minutes of sensor data before they were disabled. Dr. Chen analyzed the recordings with growing amazement and horror. "Captain, you need to see this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The sensor recordings showed something that should have been impossible. Massive ships had appeared out of nowhere, their hulls shimmering with energy that bent light around them. They moved through space in ways that violated every law of physics, phasing in and out of normal space like ghosts made solid. But it was the harvesting process that made Foster's blood run cold. Beams of energy had swept across the colony, and everything they touched simply vanished. Buildings, vehicles, people, all of it disappeared into some kind of dimensional storage system. "They're not killing our people," Foster realized. "They're collecting them." The recordings also revealed something else. In the final moments before the defense systems failed, the sensors had detected a massive structure in the void beyond the system. Something huge and alien that existed primarily outside normal space. That's their base, Dr. Chen said with certainty. They're taking everything back to that thing. Foster stared at the sensor readings for a long moment. The structure was unlike anything in human databases, a twisted mass of matter and energy that seemed to fold in on itself. Just looking at the images made his eyes water. "Get me Admiral Collins again," he ordered, "and start plotting a course for those coordinates." The Admiral's response was immediate and predictable. "Absolutely not, Captain. That's clearly a trap." "Yes, sir, it is," Foster agreed calmly. "But they have our people. All of them. 45,000 human civilians are being held in that thing, and we're the only ones who can get them back." Collins was quiet for several minutes. Foster could see him weighing the odds, calculating risks and benefits with the cold precision that had made him one of humanity's greatest military leaders. "Danny," Collins said finally, "you understand what you're suggesting? We'd be flying into completely unknown technology with no idea what we're facing." "Yes, sir. But that's never stopped us before." Collins smiled grimly. "No, it hasn't. All right, Captain. But you're not going alone. I'm assembling the largest fleet in human history. If we're going to walk into a trap, we're going to make sure it's the last trap they ever set." On Earth, President Sullivan addressed the nation, one final time before the fleet departed. "My fellow humans, we face an enemy unlike any we have encountered before. They possess technology that seems impossible, capabilities that challenge our understanding of physics itself. They have taken our people, harvested our colonies, and threatened everything we have built among the stars." She paused, her voice growing stronger. "But they have made one critical error. They believe that superior technology makes them superior beings. They think that because they can phase in and out of our reality, they are untouchable. They are about to learn why the galaxy has learned to respect humanity. We do not fight because we are the strongest. We fight because we refuse to accept that strength gives anyone the right to prey upon the innocent. We do not win because we have the best weapons. We win because we never, ever give up. To our people being held by these creatures, we are coming. To our allies throughout the galaxy, stand clear. To our enemies, wherever they may be hiding, learn today why it was a mistake to make this personal." The message was broadcast on all frequencies in every known language. Within hours, it had reached every corner of galactic civilization. And in the vast emptiness between the spiral arms, something ancient and powerful received the transmission and began to understand that perhaps humanity was not as helpless as it had assumed. The trap was indeed waiting. But the creatures who had set it were about to discover that sometimes the prey is more dangerous than the predator. The response came not in words but in action. 3 more colonies vanished overnight, but this time the attackers left something different behind. Instead of cryptic messages, they left coordinates, a location in the void between, the empty space between galactic arms where only the most desperate or foolish dared to venture. Admiral Collins stared at the star charts in his ready room aboard the flagship UES Defiance. The coordinates pointed to a region of space that most species considered cursed. No stars, no planets, no resources. Just empty darkness stretching for millions of light years. "It's obviously a trap," observed Captain Foster, who had transferred to the flagship for the final assault. "They want us to come to them." "Of course it's a trap," Collins replied calmly. "But they have our people. 48,000 human civilians are somewhere in that darkness, and we're the only ones who can bring them home." The human fleet that jumped into the void between was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. 53 ships of the line, supported by hundreds of smaller craft, all converging on coordinates that led to empty space. Every captain in the fleet understood that they were flying into the unknown, facing an enemy with technology centuries beyond their own. But they also understood that 48,000 humans were counting on them. The jump to the void between WI took 18 hours. When the fleet dropped back into normal space, they found themselves surrounded by absolute darkness. No stars, no planets, no light, except what their ships provided. Sensors are having trouble penetrating the dimensional distortions, reported Commander Lisa Park from her station on the bridge, but I'm detecting something massive directly ahead. On the main screen, a structure slowly became visible as the ship's sensors adjusted to the strange conditions. What they saw defied every law of physics and engineering that humanity understood. The alien base was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, but it seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, folding in on itself in ways that hurt to look at directly. Parts of it phased in and out of normal space, while other sections appeared to be made of materials that bent light around them. "My God," whispered Dr. Amy Chen from her position at the science station. "That thing, it's not entirely in our universe." "Explain," Collins ordered. "It exists primarily in dimensional phase space," Dr. Chen replied, her voice filled with awe and terror. "What we're seeing is just a small portion of the actual structure. Most of it is spread across dimensions that we can't even perceive." Before anyone could respond, the alien structure began to change. Reality seemed to bend around it as massive weapon systems emerged from its impossible geometry. Energy readings spiked off the charts as the attackers finally revealed themselves. "All ships," Admiral Collins broadcast across the fleet, his voice carrying the weight of absolute determination. "Remember what we're here for. Our people are somewhere inside that thing. We're bringing them home." "Sir," reported the tactical officer, "they're targeting us with some kind of dimensional energy weapon. I've never seen anything like it." "Evasive maneuvers," Collins ordered. "All ships, scatter and engage." The battle that followed would be studied by military historians for centuries, assuming there were any historians left to study it. The aliens possessed weapons that could ignore shields, ships that could phase in and out of normal space, and defensive systems that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Humanity fought back with the only advantages they had: adaptive tactics, desperate courage, and the absolute refusal to give up. When the alien phase weapons proved useless against ships that could disappear at will, human engineers developed resonance charges that could force them back into normal space. When dimensional distortions made targeting impossible, human pilots switched to proximity weapons and ramming attacks. The turning point came when Captain Foster, now commanding the heavy cruiser UES Retribution, made a decision that epitomized everything the galaxy had learned to fear about humanity. "Admiral," he broadcast on an open channel, "I'm reading massive life signs inside that structure. Our people are in there, but they're deep inside the dimensional matrix. We can't reach them with conventional weapons." "What are you suggesting, Captain?" Collins asked, though something in Foster's tone told him he already knew the answer. "Prometheus. Protocol, sir. Someone needs to get inside their defenses and create a cascade failure in their dimensional systems. It's the only way to force the structure back into normal space long enough for a rescue operation." The Prometheus Protocol was humanity's most desperate tactic, named after the mythological figure who stole fire from the gods. It involved deliberately allowing an enemy to capture your ship, then using that ship's reactor as a weapon from inside their defenses. It was also a suicide mission. "Captain Foster," Collins said quietly, "you understand what you're proposing?" "Yes, sir. The Retribution's reactor can be overloaded to create a dimensional cascade. If we can get inside their structure and detonate it at the right point, it should force the entire base back into normal space." "And your crew?" Foster looked around his bridge at the faces of men and women who had served with him for years. Each one nodded slightly, understanding what was being asked of them. "We volunteer, sir. All of us." Collins closed his eyes for a moment. In his long military career, he had asked people to make many sacrifices. But this was different. This was asking someone to die not for victory, but for the chance at rescue. "Permission granted, Captain. Godspeed." Foster smiled grimly and turned to his crew. "You heard the Admiral. All hands prepare for Prometheus Protocol. Engineering, begin reactor overload sequence. Navigation, plot a course directly into the heart of that structure." The Retribution broke away from the human fleet and flew straight toward the alien base. The massive structure's weapons turned toward the lone ship, energy beams that could vaporize a planet focusing on the approaching cruiser. But Foster had been flying through impossible situations his entire career. The Retribution danced between energy beams, phased through dimensional attacks, and somehow reached the alien structure's outer perimeter. "They're trying to capture us with some kind of tractor beam," reported the navigation officer. "Let them," Foster ordered calmly. "All ships, this is Captain Foster. Prometheus protocol is in effect. Light them up." The human fleet opened fire on their own ship. It was the most terrible thing any of them had ever done, but it was also exactly what Foster had counted on. The concentrated firepower of 52 ships struck the alien structure at the exact moment the Retribution's reactor went critical inside its defensive perimeter. The explosion tore through dimensions, creating a cascade failure that rippled across the alien base like a wave of pure destruction. The massive structure, which had existed partially outside normal space for millennia, was suddenly and violently forced back into the universe humanity could understand. As the alien base collapsed around them, emergency teams raced through its suddenly solid corridors. The structure was dying, its impossible geometry unraveling as dimensional systems failed throughout its length. But deep inside, they found what they were looking for: stasis chambers. Thousands of them, each containing a human colonist preserved in perfect condition. They were unconscious but alive, kept in suspended animation by technology that was already beginning to fail as the base died around them. "All rescue teams," Admiral Collins broadcast. "We have limited time. Get our people out of there now." The rescue operation that followed was a miracle of coordination and determination. Human Marines fought through collapsing corridors and failing gravity systems to reach the stasis chambers. Engineers worked frantically to adapt alien technology to human systems. Medical teams prepared to receive 48,000 people, who had been in suspended animation for weeks. As the alien structure finally collapsed completely, taking its secrets with it, the last rescue shuttle cleared the debris field. Behind them, all that remained was expanding wreckage and energy readings that suggested the aliens had retreated to whatever dimension they had come from. But they had left something behind: 48,000 human civilians, preserved and returned to their families. In the aftermath, as medical ships worked to revive the rescued colonists, Admiral Collins stood on his bridge and looked out at the wreckage of the alien base. Somewhere in that debris was all that remained of the UES Retribution and its crew. "Sir," reported Commander Park quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from the wreckage. It's Captain Foster." Collins spun around in amazement. "Put him through." Foster's voice came through the communication system, weak but unmistakably alive. "Admiral Collins, this is Captain Foster. My compliments on your timing, sir." "Danny, how the hell are you still alive?" "Would you believe superior human engineering, sir? The Retribution's emergency systems managed to phase us into a stable dimensional pocket just before the cascade reached critical. We've been floating in here waiting for rescue." Collins laughed, the first time he had laughed in days. "All ships, this is Admiral Collins. Prepare search and rescue operations. We're bringing everyone home." News of the victory spread through the galaxy faster than the human fleet could return to normal space. On the council world of Drakmor, speaker,